When Rabbi David Bar Yonah collapsed alone in his Jerusalem apartment, he expected to meet God, but not like this. Stripped of his body and flung into a living nightmare, he descended into a realm where sacred masks were burned away, and souls cried out in torment. But it wasn't fire that broke him, it was who he saw in the light. A single name shattered everything he knew. And when he returned, it was the only word he could scream: Jesus. My name is David Elon. I'm 42 years old, born and raised in Beersheba, Israel. Most people know me as the son of Rabbi Eliezer Elon, a man held in high regard, spoken of with reverence and fear. To the world, he was a spiritual giant. To me, he was a closed door. Our home was quiet. Sacred books lined every wall. You could feel the weight of God in the air. My father's study was the heart of the house, but it might as well have been on another planet. I remember sitting outside it for hours, listening to the murmurs of Torah discussions, hoping he'd call me in. Sometimes he did, but only with a nod or a glance, never with a smile. He loved God, no doubt. He loved the law, the Torah, the order of it all. But I never knew if he loved me. He spoke in commands. Study harder. Waste no time. Be clean before the Lord. And I did. I obeyed. I memorized scripture by the age of 8. I fasted on Yom Kippur until I nearly fainted. I corrected classmates in yeshiva just to earn a slight nod of approval. Sometimes it came. But never an embrace. Never a "well done, my son." Just silence. By the time I was a teenager, I knew the texts backwards and forwards. I led prayers in our synagogue. People started to call me Rabbi Elon's image. But the more they praised me, the emptier I felt inside. I remember walking home one night after evening prayer. The stars were out. The streets were silent. I looked up and asked the sky, "Why do I know so much and feel so little?" I didn't dare say that out loud. My father would have called it spiritual weakness. Maybe even rebellion. But it kept growing, this ache, this question I could never shake: is this really all there is? Everyone thought I was proud to carry the Elon name. But it felt like a weight I couldn't ever put down. A name that came with expectations, not affection. Reverence, not relationship. I pushed those feelings deep down and doubled my efforts. When my father passed away 3 years ago, I stood before hundreds and vowed to carry on his legacy. I meant it. I truly did. I wore his tallit. I copied his speech. I fasted, prayed, isolated myself. I thought, maybe if I become him, I'll finally feel him. But something stayed hollow. No matter how many rules I followed, how many blessings I recited, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was running on empty. I knew the law, but I didn't know peace. And for all the words I could quote, I hadn't yet heard the one voice that would change everything. After we buried my father, the silence in our home felt louder than ever. His study stayed untouched. His tallit still hung on the back of his chair. People came to pay respects, quoting his words like scripture, calling him the last true voice of the old world. And everywhere I went, they looked at me like I was supposed to pick up where he left off. So I did. I told myself it was my duty. I was the only son. I couldn't let the Elon name fade. Within a week, I enrolled in a rabbinical seminary. Most men take 2 years to complete it. I finished in 10 months. I studied night and day, skipped meals, avoided friends. I didn't have time for distraction. I had to become the rabbi everyone expected. But it wasn't just about study. I became my father. I preached like him. I quoted him. I even adopted his tone: firm, unshakable, untouchable. People listened. They nodded. Some even cried. And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe now I'm doing something holy. But every night, after the applause faded and I was alone again, the ache returned. I prayed more. I fasted longer. I stopped listening to music. I turned off my phone. I made my life smaller, hoping it would somehow bring me closer to God. But instead of feeling filled, I felt like a stranger in my own soul. Sometimes I dreamed of my father. He would stand far away in a desert, watching me without speaking. I'd yell out, ask him what I was doing wrong. He never answered. Once, I thought I heard him say, "You're not listening," but I didn't know what that meant. Everyone around me saw a rising star. I felt like a man on the edge of a cliff, holding on to a name that didn't belong to me anymore. I kept telling myself I was honoring his memory. But deep down, something darker whispered, "You're not doing this for him. You're doing this to matter." I didn't know who I was without the title, the pressure, the robe. I was scared to find out. The ordination ceremony was set for the 3rd of Tevet. I planned to wear my father's tallit. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd be proud. That I'd feel his blessing. But what I felt instead was distance. I had chased the law. I had memorized every line. And yet, the God behind the words still felt silent. The night before my ordination, I couldn't sleep. My apartment was quiet, too quiet. It was the same apartment my father lived in during his final months. Every corner carried his memory. The air still smelled faintly of his cologne and old parchment. I sat cross-legged on the floor, facing the mirror, practicing blessings under my breath. I had already recited them 100 times, but I needed them to be perfect. The ceremony was hours away, and I couldn't afford a single mistake. I wanted to feel ready. Instead, I felt hollow. Like I was about to perform a role in a play that no longer made sense. I kept going anyway. Then it happened. A strange pain, sharp and cold, shot through the center of my chest. It wasn't physical like a cramp or a pulled muscle. It felt like something had reached through my ribcage and grabbed hold of my soul. My skin turned to ice. My limbs locked. The air grew thick, heavy. I tried to stand, but the room tilted. The lights flickered. Then everything slowed down. Time itself began to stretch. I could hear the hum of the electricity in the walls, every creak of the floorboards beneath me. The mirror across from me blurred, then rippled like water. My own face looked foreign, pale, wide-eyed, scared. I staggered backward and fell to my knees. My heartbeat became a drum in my ears. My breath turned shallow, then vanished. And then, nothing. Just silence. And darkness. Not the kind you get when you turn off the lights. This darkness was alive. It wrapped around me like smoke. It had weight. A texture. A smell. Burnt wood. Ash. Old paper catching fire. It pressed against me from all sides, pulling me into itself. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. I tried to pray. But the words died before they reached my lips. I was no longer in my apartment. No walls. No ceiling. No floor. Just a void, endless and thick. My body was gone, but I still felt everything: panic, cold, pain, dread. And the worst part? I knew I hadn't died, not fully. But I had crossed a line. I was somewhere in between. Somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. I had no idea what was waiting for me. But I knew I wasn't in control anymore. Something had taken over. And whatever it wasn't done with me yet. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't on the floor anymore. I wasn't anywhere I could explain. The darkness around me wasn't just dark. It breathed. It moved. It watched. I couldn't see it, but I felt it watching me, not with eyes, but with a kind of knowing that stripped me bare. There was no pain in the usual sense. No flames. No demons with pitchforks. But this place, wherever it was far worse. It was silence that screamed. Stillness that exposed. I didn't have a body, yet I was aware. I didn't have a mouth, yet I felt like I was screaming. Not out loud, but from the inside. This wasn't a punishment chamber. It was a courtroom without a judge. A mirror without mercy. And in that mirror, I saw the truth. Not just mine. Everyone's. The first figure I saw was a man I recognized. Rav Shlomo Elon, once honored across Israel. He had led my bar mitzvah. I remembered his voice trembling with passion as he blessed me that day. But now, his voice trembled with something else. I didn't mean to lie, he whispered over and over, like a broken record. Around his neck were scrolls, old Torah scrolls, charred and cracked, wrapped like chains. Each time he tried to pull them off, flames burst through the pages. He cried black tears that sizzled on his cheeks and vanished into smoke. Then another. Rav Yedidiah, the scholar they used to call the light of the yeshiva. His lips were sewn shut with golden thread. His eyes begged, but his mouth couldn't speak. Surrounding him were dozens of transparent hands grasping, accusing, clawing. Above his head hung a menorah, melted and upside down. Its wax dripped onto his scalp like boiling sorrow. And then a voice came, not from him, but from everywhere: you worshipped your own mind, not the living God. I kept moving, or rather, I was being moved. Like I was drifting through the gut of something alive. Around me were rabbis, teachers, elders, people I once revered, muttering half-prayers in twisted voices, tearing at their garments, clinging to torn Bibles with hands that bled ink. One held a Torah scroll, but its letters ran down like blood. On it, I saw the words, "You taught what you never lived. You fed on honor and forgot my name." Every soul I passed was a warning. This wasn't hell like I'd ever imagined it. There were no flames licking at feet. No devils with horns. Just truth. Blazing, unbearable truth. The lies people had built their lives around were peeled back like old paint. Every sermon preached for applause. Every prayer said for show. Every good deed done to be seen. They were all there, walking in circles, chained to their own words. I wanted to turn away, to close my eyes. But I had no eyelids. And there was nowhere to hide. I wasn't being tortured. I was being shown. This was the place where pride comes to die. Where religion without love reveals its rot. And I knew deep in my soul I had come dangerously close to belonging here. Through the thick of that living darkness, I felt it before I saw him. A presence. Familiar. Heavy. Like the smell of my childhood home. Like the weight of silence behind a closed study door. Then he appeared. My father. Not as the community remembered him, not the towering man in white robes, not the fierce voice that thundered from the bima. No. He was on his knees. Torn. Small. Wrapped in chains of fire that didn't burn the body, but something deeper. They pulsed like veins of regret around his wrists and shoulders. He looked up. And when our eyes met, I stopped breathing. He didn't speak right away. He only stared. But his eyes, God, his eyes held everything. Sorrow. Recognition. And something I had never seen from him, not once in my life. Humility. David, he said, voice cracked and hoarse, you are here. I moved to step toward him, but something stopped me. Not a wall, not a force. Truth, maybe. Truth so strong it kept me still. Why? I asked, choking on the word. Why are you here, Abba? He didn't flinch. He didn't defend himself. He wept. Tears like ash slid down his cheeks, vanishing before they touched the ground. I served the law, he said. But I rejected the truth. I shook my head, trembling. You lived for the Torah. You taught it. You gave everything. I gave everything except my heart, he interrupted. I worshipped the text, but never the author. I led others to tradition, but not to the living God. His chains tightened as he spoke, reacting to each confession like they were alive. I saw him, David. I saw signs of the Messiah in the scriptures. The Lamb. The servant, the Redeemer. I knew, but I buried it. I feared losing my place. My name. My power. He looked away, shoulders shaking. Jesus is the truth, he whispered. He is. And I turned my back on him. A silence fell between us deeper than anything I'd ever known. The kind that makes your bones ache. Then he lifted his head and looked at me, not with authority, but with desperation. Forgive me, he said. Forgive me for teaching you rules without love. For handing you my blindness and calling it honor. For building walls around your soul instead of showing you the gate. His face was pale. His voice cracked. And for the first time, he didn't feel like my father. He felt like a man. A broken man who had just realized too late what mattered most. And I stood there no longer seeking his approval. Only aching for his freedom. I stood frozen in that darkness, my father's confession echoing like a bell that would never stop ringing. The world around us pulsed, breathing, watching. Then, it changed. The air thickened. Stillness fell. And from the center of the silence came a voice. Not loud. Not booming. It didn't thunder like I imagined divine voices would. It was calm. Steady. Pure. But it pierced through me like fire through dry paper. David, it said. Not from outside, but from within. It filled me. You are not dead. But you have come too close to the edge. I tried to speak, to respond, but my thoughts weren't mine to control. The voice knew me. Every fear. Every mask. Every sermon I'd rehearsed to hide what I lacked. You came here not by accident, but by mercy, the voice continued. This is not your end. It is your moment to see. And to choose. I wanted to run. But where? I had no body. No breath. Only soul. This place, the voice said, is not a punishment. It is truth. It is where what's hidden is shown. Where what's memorized is measured by the heart. The darkness pulsed again, and suddenly I saw them. More faces. More souls. Some I recognized, teachers, elders, men I once admired. They wandered, each carrying what looked like books. But the pages were blank. Some screamed. Others recited verses with no sound. And I knew these were not sinners by the world's standard. These were the respected. The religious. The trusted. And yet they were empty. Why? I thought. They followed the rules. They served the law. They served their image, the voice answered. They honored the law, but ignored the one it pointed to. Then the voice turned inward again. And you, David, are standing where paths divide. You can follow the same silence that bound your father, or you can follow the truth he rejected. I shook inside. The weight of it was unbearable. You are not here to be condemned. You are here to choose. The voice faded into the stillness, but its weight remained. I had grown up chasing a man who wore holiness like a coat but never let it reach his skin. Now I was being asked, would I do the same? Or would I step into what that coat had always pointed toward? I couldn't move. Everything around me, every scream, every echo of my father's words pressed against me like a weight I couldn't carry. I wasn't dead. But I wasn't alive either. I was stuck between what I had known and something terrifyingly real. I fell. Not with my body because I had none, but with my soul. And for the first time in my life, I stopped trying to hold it all together. I stopped reciting, stopped performing, stopped pretending. I had nothing left. That's when it happened. A sound broke out from somewhere deep inside me. Not a prayer. Not a blessing. Just a cry. A raw, wordless cry, soaked in years of silence and buried pain. If you are real, I whispered into the void, if Jesus is real, show me. I didn't plan those words. I had never allowed them to form before. But now, they poured out not as rebellion, not as betrayal but as desperation. I didn't know doctrine. I didn't know theology. But I knew hunger. I knew I couldn't lie to myself anymore. If you're there, please. I don't want darkness. I don't want to be lost. I don't care about tradition anymore. I want to know the truth. And with that whisper, something shifted. Not around me, within me. The weight didn't lift, but something cracked open. A small space. A breath of hope. It wasn't dramatic. There were no thunderclaps, no visions, just silence. A deeper silence than the one I had known before. But it was different. This silence didn't accuse. It waited. It wasn't empty. It was full. And I felt, for the first time, that maybe, just maybe, I had been heard. At first, it was only a flicker. A faint glow in the distance, soft as a candle's breath but unlike any light I had ever seen. It didn't blind. It drew me. The darkness around me didn't fight it. It stepped back. The cries that had haunted me faded into quiet. And then, from the heart of that light, he stepped forward. He didn't announce himself. No thunder. No declarations. Just presence. And love. Not the kind of love I had studied or heard about. This was something deeper. Fiercer. It wrapped around me like warmth on a winter morning. It searched through me without breaking me. And then he looked at me. Jesus. I knew it before he said a word. He looked at me with eyes that held galaxies, eyes that had seen everything I had ever done, every thought I'd ever buried, every moment I had pushed his name away. And yet, he did not look away. There was no anger in him. No disappointment. Only a love so pure it made me tremble. That gaze shattered me. Not because it hurt but because it healed. I fell. Or maybe I knelt. It didn't matter. Tears flowed without shame. I had spent my life chasing truth. I memorized the Torah. I revered the prophets. I honored the traditions. And there, in front of me, stood the one they all pointed to. Without speaking, he made it known. He was the Passover lamb. He was the suffering servant Isaiah saw. He was the blood over the mercy seat, the light in the wilderness, the voice that whispered through every page I had ever studied. I had read it all. But I had missed him. He didn't condemn me for it. He simply revealed it. Like opening a door I hadn't known was there. He didn't push. He didn't force. He just stood in truth, and I saw that truth was a person. It was him. Jesus. And suddenly, everything else faded, the fear, the weight of my family's name, the judgment, the laws. Only one thing remained, love that did not turn away. In that moment, it was like my soul opened its eyes for the first time. The words I had recited for decades, the rituals I had memorized, the traditions I had clung to, suddenly they all shifted. Not disappeared. Not broken. Just fulfilled. Everything pointed to him. I saw the Passover lamb, not just as history or tradition, but as him, the innocent one, sacrificed so others could live. I remembered every year we cleaned our homes of leaven, roasted the lamb, read from the Haggadah. And now I saw. It was never just about Egypt. It was about the heart. About a greater deliverance. The pillar of fire that led our people through the desert, he was the light in that fire. He had always been there. Not distant. Not hidden. Just unrecognized. The temple veil torn from top to bottom, it had always been a sign. The separation between us and God, torn open by love. And Isaiah's suffering servant, how had I missed it? We read that passage every year, some with discomfort, others with forced interpretations. But here, it was as clear as day. He was pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. It wasn't metaphor. It wasn't poetry. It was prophecy. It was Jesus. He hadn't come to replace the scriptures. He had come to complete them. And I had taught them all without ever knowing him. I had spoken of God's holiness, God's judgment, God's commandments. But I had missed his son. I had trained for years to speak eloquently about the Torah, the Psalms, the prophets. I had debated, argued, lectured. But I had never encountered the living word. Until now. Standing in front of him, I didn't feel ignorant, I felt awakened. Not because I had figured anything out, but because he had shown me. The scriptures were no longer just text to study. They were alive. And they all whispered his name. Yeshua. The Messiah. The one I had feared would dishonor my father's legacy had, in truth, honored God in the fullest way. Everything changed. I no longer saw Jesus as a threat to my heritage. I saw him as the root of it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just know about God. I knew him. I woke up gasping. My body was drenched in sweat. My sheets clung to me like wet cloth, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might tear through my chest. I lay on my side, breath shallow, hands trembling, as if I had just run through fire and barely made it out alive. But this wasn't a dream. I knew it in my bones. In my spirit. In the air around me. Something had changed, not out there, but inside me. I had seen him. I had heard him. And I could never unsee it. Never unhear it. Never forget it. I lay there for minutes, maybe longer, unable to move, my thoughts spinning but anchored by one single truth: Jesus is real. Jesus is the Messiah. Not because someone convinced me. Not because I read a verse differently. Because I met him. And I had been shown what very few are ever shown: what hides behind religion, behind pride, behind fear. The truth. Blinding, beautiful truth. I should have been terrified. I should have wanted to bury it, push it away, call it a vision, a hallucination. But I couldn't. The presence of Jesus was still with me, gentle, strong, undeniable. And yet, as the hours passed and my breathing returned to normal, a weight settled on me. A different kind of weight. I knew I couldn't stay silent. The ceremony was still set for the next morning. My rabbinical ordination. The robes, the scrolls, the expectations, the community, all waiting for me to walk in my father's footsteps. But I couldn't. Not as if nothing had happened. Not as if I hadn't been torn open and remade. I didn't know what I would say, or what they would do. I only knew this: if I walked into that synagogue and pretended, I would be denying the one who had just pulled me from the abyss. I had spent my whole life trying to earn the approval of men. Now I had heard the voice of God. And I wasn't going to ignore it. The next morning, I stood at the back of the synagogue, dressed simply. No ceremonial robes. No talith. Just me, David Levi from Jerusalem, no longer hiding. The room was filled. Rabbis, elders, family, friends. People who had known me since I was a boy. They looked at me with pride, expecting the son of Rabbi Ezra to take his rightful place. I saw my mother in the front row, her hands folded, eyes bright with anticipation. My uncle beside her. My cousin, already ordained, beaming. But I wasn't there to receive honor. I was there to speak truth. When they called me forward, I walked to the podium with slow, steady steps. My hands were trembling. My chest was tight. But my spirit was calm. The peace I felt was not my own. It had been given to me. I looked out over the room and began. I was ready to become a rabbi today, I said. But last night, something happened. I didn't dream. I didn't imagine. I died or something close to it. And I saw everything. I saw my father. I saw hell. I saw what lies beneath the surface when we worship tradition more than truth. There were murmurs. Shifts in seats. Frowns. But I kept going. And in that darkness, I called out. I cried, not to a name I was taught, but to the one I now know is real. I paused. Jesus. Yeshua. The room froze. Silence, sharp as glass. I saw him. He met me in mercy. He revealed the scriptures to me. Everything I've studied, everything we revere, it points to him. He is the Messiah. Gasps. A cry from the women's side. My uncle stood abruptly. Another rabbi shouted, "Blasphemy!" My cousin turned his face away. Still, I stood. I don't speak these things lightly, I said. I speak them because I must. I've seen the truth. And now I cannot pretend. I will not. They didn't let me finish. I was escorted out. Some wouldn't look at me. Others cursed under their breath. My mother sat motionless as I passed. Her eyes filled not with tears but with something colder. Disbelief. By sunset, my name was erased from the synagogue's rolls. My apartment key didn't work. My family blocked my number. I was alone. But not abandoned. That night, I walked the empty streets of Jerusalem with no home, no title, and no plan. But I felt free. The truth had cost me everything I thought mattered. And still, I had peace. Real peace. The kind that only comes after light breaks through the darkness. I live now in a quiet town far from Jerusalem. No one here knows my name. I'm not followed by titles or whispers. I wake up, drink tea, read scripture not as ritual, but as revelation. I walk the streets without being recognized. And for the first time in my life, I am not performing. I am just a man who met the truth. I work a simple job. I speak when asked. I pray often. Sometimes I meet others like me, people who've walked out of systems built on fear and found love waiting on the other side. I still miss my family. I pray for them every day. I ask God to send anyone who can reach them. I no longer carry bitterness. Only a hope that what He did for me, He will do for them too. The fire I saw has never left me. Neither has the light. It lives in me now, not as memory, but as mission. I speak when invited. I write when I can. I know most won't believe. I know some will hate me for even speaking His name. But I speak it anyway. Because someone out there is just like I was. You know the words. You've read the books. You've followed the rules. But your soul is still thirsty. You feel the hollowness between the prayers. You ache when no one's looking. And something inside you keeps asking, is this it? Please hear me. There is more. There is a love so deep it will break you and heal you in the same breath. There is a truth that does not condemn, but sets you free. His name is Jesus. He is not your enemy. He is not a stranger. He is the Son who was sent to find the lost, and that includes you. I did not find Him by being good enough. He found me in the dark and pulled me into light. And now I live to tell others before they fall where I fell. So I beg you, not as a preacher, not as a prophet, just as one who knows what's waiting on both sides, don't wait for the fire to show you the truth. Choose it while grace still calls your name.